Harimi, harimi, al tirai, harimi, al tirai. Imri le'arei Yehuda, hine Elokeichem. Harimi, harimi, al tirai.
Okay, so what page are we on?
We're on page 774. Parshas Beha'aloscha was just saying it's the best parsha because it was my bar mitzvah parsha.
It's your what?
It's my bar mitzvah parsha.
Oh,
So that's why
then it's got to be special.
It's the best parsha. Okay. So let's just start reading. Vaydaber Hashem Moshe Lemor. Hashem spoke to Moshe saying, Daber el Aaron, speak to Aaron, speak to your brother Aaron, the Kohen, V'amarta elav, and tell him, Beha'aloscha es haneros, when you go up to light the menorah, the candles, el mul penei menorah, facing the menorah, ya'iru shivas haneros. You should light seven lamps.
98.
Nope, that's for Hanukkah.
Right.
But the menorah in the temple had seven
That's right.
different.
Okay, but
spots
what's
to
the
light.
difference? Why did they light 7 back in the times of the base of Midrash versus Hanukkah?
I don't know specifically why it was 7. The only reason we have 8, that's because of Hanukkah, the miracle of Hanukkah that it happened for 8 days.
Because of the miracle of the oil?
Right, because it lasted for 8 days.
That's both
But,
biblical, too.
And that's beyond the mention of a week.
What do you mean?
Beyond the mention of a week, since a week is 7 days.
Right, so it lasted for 8 days. This was just had 7 candles on it, 7 candles on it. But you brought up Hanukkah, which is actually what I want to talk about.
Oh.
Whoa! You once again predicted the year. Rashi says,
Good job.
keep it up.
Yes.
Lama nismecha parshas hamenorah la parshas hanasim. Why do we have the parsha of menorah right next to the parsha of Nesiim? So what's Rashi referring to? The end of last week's parsha, you may have noticed, it was very repetitive. We talked about the sacrifices that were brought by the heads of the tribes, and there were 12 of them. And the Torah goes through over and over again every single sacrifice that the heads of the tribes brought. And it repeats and repeats and repeats and repeats over and over again, making Parshas Nasa the longest parsha. It's the longest non-double parsha. So if you were in shul this past Shabbos, you might have noticed it was a little long. But the Baal Koreh is it's a little easier for the Baal Koreh because it's repeating the same thing over and over again, so he knows it. So the question is, Rashi's asking, how come after we just finished reading about the sacrifices that the heads of the tribes brought when they were inaugurating the Mishkan, the tabernacle in the desert, why do we talk about lighting the menorah right away? What is the connection? Valid question. So he says, Shekeshara Aaron, Chanukas Hanasiyim, Chalsha Asdaita. When Aaron, the first Kohen, the brother of Moshe, saw the heads of the tribes bringing these sacrifices to the Mishkan, the heads of the tribes, he became a little sad, a little down. Shlo hayimahim b'Chanukah, lo hu v'lo shifto. He wasn't part of the inauguration of the temple, him or his tribe. Right, he was from the tribe of Levi. They didn't participate. It was the 12 tribes. The tribe of Levi, he doesn't have a portion in Israel. It wasn't considered part of the tribes to bring a sacrifice for the inauguration of the temple of the Mishkan, so the tabernacle. So he was a little upset. He was a little sad about it. So it says, Amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so Hashem says to him, Chayecha shalcha gedola m'shelahem she'ata madlik u'meitiv haneros. So Hashem says to him, Chayecha. He says, what you're going to have is going to be better than theirs because you are going to get to light the menorah. That's what Rashi says. So don't feel bad. Every day you're going to get to light the menorah. So you shouldn't feel bad. So I would like to read a question. Makes sense, Rashi says?
Yes.
Good. Ramban says,
No.
nope, he has a problem with it. Let's read what the Ramban has a problem with, what he doesn't like.
It's always someone that disagrees.
Baruch Hashem.
Light things up.
No pun intended or pun intended?
That's a pun intended.
That was a pun intended?
It is a pun intended.
Oh, very good, very good.
But I'm not a Kohen, so.
Not yet. Keep working, man.
I can make you.
Darren could help you out.
I can make.
I appreciate that.
If a big enough donation, we can work something out.
I can afford it.
Yeah,
It's like
money talks, Mister.
What was that joke they say that someone came to the rabbi and wanted bar mitzvah his dog? Oh, disgusting! You asked me such a question, bar mitzvah a dog. How could I do such a thing? You think this is a joke? He says, I want to donate $100,000 to your shul. And the rabbi says, oh, you didn't tell me the dog was Jewish. What's his Hebrew name? Okay, so the Ramban says, Velonis barali. Says, I don't understand. Lama nichmu b'hadlakas haneros. Why did Aaron feel better? He was upset that he didn't get to participate in the lighting of the Hanukkah candle, of the sacrifices that were brought to inaugurate the Mishkan. So why did he feel better with the Hadlakas Haneros, with lighting the menorah? What about, there's plenty of other things that Aaron gets to do. The Ketores, the incense, are brought in the temple every morning and every evening. So he got to do that already. Shashiv Chaba Kasav, the Torah speaks very highly of the Ketores. In fact, a lot of people started learning about the Ketores in the past few years because specifically the Ketores, the incense in the temple, stop plagues. They stop epidemics, pandemics. So a lot of people were studying it and reciting it during Corona. It's a whole different discussion on why that happens.
If we really had if we really still had the temple, I don't think COVID would have ever happened.
Probably not. It's true. Probably true.
I'm with you.
So that's something he had. Also, Uvavodas Yom Kippurim, She'enik Sher Elabo. What about the avoda of Yom Kippur? What the Kohen, the special service that the Kohen Gadol does on Yom Kippur. We read during Musaf about this whole service where the Kohen goes in the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippur. Not just the Kohen Gadol, the high priest. Right. Aaron was the only human being in the world that could do that. So he got the privilege of doing that. Right, and also, besides that, he brought the sacrifices, all these sacrifices. So, why specifically was it the menorah the Ramban's bothered that comforted him? Right, Rashi said, why do we have the story of the Nesiim, of the princes of the tribes bringing the sacrifices right next to the menorah? The reason is because the menorah made Aaron feel better. Why did he need the menorah? Why specifically the menorah made him feel better? What about the ketores that he brought every day? What about the sacrifices that he brought every day? What about the service in the temple on Yom Kippur, the Holy of Holies? Such a great thing. What was so special about the menorah that made Aaron feel better? So you know what the Ramban says? Avalinin haggadah hazu lidrus remez min parsha al Chanukah shel neros shahis b'bayis sheni al yedei Aaron uvanav ritzoni leimer chashmanan kain gadol uvanav. He says this is a hint. It wasn't specifically the menorah that was lit in the temple that made him feel better, but rather it was the menorah that was going to be, like you were mentioning, that was going to be at the times of the second temple when the Maccabees defeated the Greeks. That's specific because what was Hanukkah? What does Hanukkah mean? That was a rededication of the temple. A rededication of the temple. So who were the Chashmonaim? Who were the Maccabees? Those were Kohanim. Those were the descendants of Aaron. Those were Aaron's great-great-great-grandparents who fought off the Greeks, who said, Mila Shem Elai, who are going to be the few Jews that stand up for what's right. There were many, many Jews who assimilated back then. We don't realize often the story of Hanukkah that it wasn't just a war between the Greeks and the Jews. There were many Jews called Misyavnim that they totally took on Greek views and became Greek in their culture, and they were actually on the side of the Greeks.
But the Maccabees didn't exist during the time of Aaron.
No, they didn't.
Right.
But this is hinting, Hashem was telling Aaron in the future, your children are going to participate in the rededication of the temple. So don't feel bad that you weren't part of the dedication of the temple now.
Because Hashem, of course, would know that, but not Aaron.
Right. That's what he told Aaron. He's hinting to Aaron, don't worry, your great-great-great-grandchildren are going to participate in the rededication of the temple. And they're going to be the few ones that stand up for Hashem. And they're going to be the few, the proud, the faithful that weren't swayed by the Greek culture to be Greek, but to be true to Jewish values and to risk their lives and fight the Greeks off and rededicate the temple. And then, like you mentioned, then they lit the menorah with 8 branches. They lit the menorah in the temple, but then now we light the menorah with 8 branches to commemorate that miracle.
It's all foreshadowing everything. It was told to Abraham.
Yeah.
Yep.
This is wonderful.
So that's why the Ramban.
I'm in awe.
There you go. That's the Ramban, Nachmanides. So
That's the right word, too.
if you
Didn't you say the Ramban said that Aaron wasn't happy? Was not?
No, so Aaron was upset. He was sad that he didn't get to participate in the dedication of the tabernacle. So then Hashem tells him, don't worry, in the future your children are going to participate in the rededication of the temple with the lighting of the menorah. So the Ramban is saying it's not necessarily referring to the menorah that was lit in the temple every day, but rather Hashem was comforting Aaron by telling him that you're going to get to light the menorah in the second temple to rededicate the temple.
I'm putting the pieces together.
Right. That's the Ramban. Okay, so that was about the menorah. Now, I would like to talk about Pesach Sheni, the second Passover. If you didn't have enough fun cleaning your house for Passover the first time, there is a second Passover. What is the second Passover?
Is that coming up?
That's coming up, page 778.
No, but did we pass it?
Oh, we passed it, yeah. It was in the
so,
14th ER.
Okay.
So that was like a month ago, about a month ago.
We missed the last opportunity.
but it's in this week's parsha. So it goes. The psukim here are talking about. I've mentioned this before, actually. This Dvar Torah I'm saying. It's actually what I'm mentioning is from Rav Gedalia Shor, who is, as I mentioned before, the rabbi of Sons of Israel, was Rabbi Nathan Shor, my childhood rabbi growing up. So this is his uncle, was the Rosh Yeshiva of Torah Vadas in
When you
Brooklyn.
had your bar mitzvah, was it Rabbi Shor?
Rabbi Shor, yeah,
Okay,
sure.
that's what I thought.
He made me a man. He signed my bar mitzvah certificate. So
Okay.
only because of him. So what happened? So on Pesach, we don't do this anymore because we don't have a temple, or we don't have a mishkan. But back in the day, in addition to cleaning your house, getting rid of all the chametz, and buying matzah, and buying mar and all that, you also had to buy a sheep, a lamb, and you had to bring it to the temple, and you had to have the Kohen Darren, you would slaughter it for us, and you would collect its blood, spritz the blood, and we would bring the carcass back, and we would eat it at the end of the Seder. And it's a mitzvah to eat the Korban Pesach, the Pesach sacrifice. It's one of the big mitzvahs of Passover that we don't have anymore because we don't have a temple. So, fine. So the rule is, though, if you are tameh, if you're impure, spiritually impure, let's say a person got in contact with a dead body, can't eat the Korban Pesach, he can't eat the Pesach sacrifice. So let's see what happened at the first Passover. So here we have the laws about bringing it up, bringing it in the afternoon. Let's start with Pasuk Vav, 6, start in the middle here, 9-6, page 778. Vahi anashim asher hayu tmeim lenefesh adam v'lo yachlu lasus haPesach. There were certain people that were spiritually impure because they came in contact with a corpse. Bayom hahu on that day. Vayikru lifnei Moshe, and they came in front of Moshe, lifnei Aaron, in front of Aaron. Bayom hahu on that day. Vayomru, when they said, Vayomru anashim hahema elav anachnu tmeim lenefesh adam. We are impure. They said to Moshe and Aaron, Lamani gara, why should we lose out? Levilti hikr ves karban Hashem b'modo, that we can't bring the sacrifice of God in the proper time b'toch b'nei Yisrael with the rest of the Jewish people. They're saying, why should we lose out just because we're impure? That's not fair. Vayomer aleim, Moshe said to them, Imdu ve'eshma ma yitzava Hashem lachem. I will go and see what Hashem has to say about this. Vaydaber Hashem Moshe lemor. Hashem spoke to Moshe saying, Daber el b'nei Yisrael lemor. Speak to the children of Israel saying, Ish ki yatamei lenefesh o b'derech rechoka. If a person will be impure, or he's far away, lechem oladorosechem va'asu pesach l'Hashem b'chodesh hasheni, on the second month, ba'arba asar yom ben arbaim yasu aso. They should bring it in the second month, right? Because Pesach is in Nisan, which is really the first month. So you should bring it in the second month. Al matzah mar yachlu, and eat it with matzah mar. And Hashem continues to give more laws of the Pesach sacrifice. So because these people asked, they felt very bad that they couldn't bring the Pesach sacrifice. So don't worry, you can bring it in a month when you're spiritually pure.
Pesach Sheni.
Right,
But
Pesach Sheni.
But they couldn't use the red heifer to be pure? Or?
So the thing with the red heifer is that it takes 7 days. So let's say you're a rabbi who has to, you wouldn't have this issue necessarily because you're a Kohen. But let's say a rabbi had to conduct a funeral, or a person had to attend a funeral 3 days before Pesach. Then they wouldn't have time to become pure in time for Pesach because you need 7 days. You have to get spritzed on the third day and seventh day, and wait a certain amount of time. And these people, you know what they were doing actually? They were carrying the bones of Yosef from Egypt to be buried in Israel.
Right.
So they said, why should we lose out? So Rav Gedalia Shor asked a question here. He said, Lama Nigara. Why should we lose out? This is very simple. They were impure. There's something in the Torah called Onus Rachmana Patre. If a person experiences circumstances beyond his control, then the law is that you don't do the mitzvah. For example, if you wake up one morning and you have a really bad stomach ache and you're not, I don't know, you have a fever, you're not feeling well, can't go to davening, okay, you can't go to davening. Onus Rachmana Patre, circumstances beyond your control, there's nothing to do. Where you don't see Lama Nigara, why did we lose out? You know, or you can't put on tefillin, you don't have a clean body, so you can't put on tefillin. But Lama Nigara, why should we lose out? No, those are the rules. If a person is circumstances beyond his control, that's it. So what specifically here were they asking? Lama Nigara, why did we lose out? Question makes sense? Agree with the question? Okay. So it's very interesting what he cites here a story in the Zohar. I always think this story is very interesting. He said there were 3 Tanaim, 3 sages of the Mishnah. So we're talking about the year, probably around like 200, maybe before, after the Second Temple period, during the Second Temple period. There were 3 of these rabbis, Tanaim, who were engaged in the mitzvah of Pidyon Shvuyim. They were redeeming a Jewish captive. There's a mitzvah to save a Jewish captive. If a Jewish person gets kidnapped or he gets captured, there's a mitzvah to redeem him, to save him. Very big mitzvah. So the rule is if you're involved in a mitzvah, one mitzvah, you don't stop to get involved in a second mitzvah. You finish the mitzvah. So
I
obviously,
learned that in brachos.
there you go. Osik b'mitzvah, pater min a mitzvah. You're becoming a big Talmid Chacham. Baruch Hashem.
Cute.
Osik b'mitzvah, pater min a mitzvah.
And thus Pesach Sheni, if you were unable to like attend a Seder or bring a sacrifice to the Beis HaMikdash, you would do it there. It would be one last chance.
So that's what happened at the end after they asked, why did we lose out? But we're asking, what were they bothered by in the first place? Why did they come to Moshe and say, why did we lose out?
Why would come to Moses?
Like, well, sometimes, unfortunately, the circumstances beyond your control, and you can't do a mitzvah. Okay, like that's life. You know, why specifically here were they so upset? So, we're gonna get back to that question. But I'm telling this story is to kind of bring out a point that Rabbi Shor wants to make. So he says there were these three Tanaim who were engaged in Pidyon Shul when they're rescuing a Jewish captive. So the law is, since they were rescuing a Jewish captive, they didn't say Shema that morning. So this little boy sees them coming back, and he says, I can tell by your faces that you didn't say Shema this morning. You can tell on the forehead. There's this Kabbalistic thing where you can tell a person's sins by looking at his forehead. I'm not sure there's anyone alive who can do this now, but there's such a thing like that.
I believe it.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are people now that can.
Could be.
You
And
mean like the wrinkles in your forehead or something?
whatever it is, I don't know how it works because I can't do it. But
There's people that are intuitive. They
the-
can read you.
there are people, are Kabbalists, but I don't know. And if they can do it, they're probably not telling you they can do it. Anyone who tells you they can do it probably can't. And anyone who can do it is probably not telling you. But this little boy, somehow, I don't know why this wasn't a little bit of chutzpah, but he said to these rabbis that I can tell you didn't say Shema this morning. So it seems like there was something lacking that they didn't say Shema, even though they were doing this mitzvah. Okay, that's one story. Another thing, Gemara in Megillah says, Purim, right? I have a story of Purim. Who's the hero of the story? Esther and Mordechai. Save the Jewish people. Best thing ever. Great, awesome. Gemara says something very interesting. Actually, the Megillah itself says something interesting, which I never noticed this. It says, V'gadol laYehudim v'ratzei l'rov echav. So the Megillah says that Mordechai was ratzoi, he was pleasing, he was beloved to most of his brethren. What does that mean, most? It's like a weird thing to say a little bit.
You can't
So
make everybody happy. That's,
So that's not what it means. Actually, the Gemara is going to say a little different. It says v'lo l'kol echav. The Gemara says not to all of his brothers. Melamed shepir shemimenu miktzah Sanhedrin. Well, actually, it is what he's saying. He was on the Sanhedrin, the great supreme rabbinical court of 70 sages. Some of the Sanhedrin separated themselves from him. And why? It says Amar Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef says, Gadol Talmid Torah Yosef me'etzalos nefashos. Studying Torah is greater than saving lives. What was Mordechai doing? He was saving the Jewish people, saving probably millions of lives.
right.
But what's better? If you had to ask someone, what's better? What's a bigger mitzvah, studying Torah or saving lives?
Most people would say saving lives.
But they're wrong.
But I understand why
Right.
they're wrong. Because let's see if I can put this together. During Hanukkah, we were being assimilated. So we were losing Torah.
Mhm.
And then we would lose as a people, our entire existence. And in Purim, we were losing our lives, but not losing our Torah. So if we lost our lives, God forbid, then we would still have Torah. If we were assimilated, we wouldn't have Torah, and that's the end of the covenant, and everything would be chaos.
Right, it would be the death of the Jewish people. Right?
Yeah.
But if someone were to ask you, what's the bigger mitzvah? The bigger mitzvah is studying Torah. However, that doesn't mean if we're studying Torah now, if we would, God forbid, see someone outside whose life was in danger, someone, God forbid, would collapse, we'd have to stop studying Torah and call 911 and do CPR and whatever we have to do.
Even if it's Shabbos.
Right. Even though, what is greater? What's the greater mitzvah? Studying Torah. But there's a condition in studying Torah. If someone's life is in danger, you stop to help them, like you said, even on Shabbos. But studying Torah is greater. So, why did they separate from Mordechai? Because even though he did the right thing, Mordechai did the right thing. He had to stop his Torah learning in order to save the Jewish people. He did what he was supposed to do. But why is it that Hashem made it come to him that he was the one who had to stop his Torah learning to do it? So he says, you see from there that there was a little something lacking from the fact that Hashem made it come about through Mordechai, that Mordechai had to stop his Torah learning, that he had to be the one to stop learning to save the Jewish people. And the same thing with these three rabbis who are going to save this captive. they did the right thing. They weren't supposed to say Shema. They were saving a Jewish captive. But why did they have to be the ones to do it? Why did Hashem make it happen to them?
Well, because they're the closest.
Well, no, but
The most available.
But who's the one who runs all the events? Hashem, God.
yeah.
God made it happen, that they're the ones who have to do it. So Gedal Yeshua says that even though there's a law, that onus Rahman Patre, that if circumstances are beyond your control and you can't do a mitzvah, or osik with mitzvah pater min a mitzvah, that you don't have to say Shema because you're doing something else, or like Mordechai, that he had to save the Jewish people but he had to stop learning. But why was it that Hashem made it that you became sick, that you couldn't do the mitzvah? Meaning, there was a little bit lacking. Not saying you did something wrong necessarily, but there was something maybe that Hashem made it come about that you weren't able to do the mitzvah. That's what he says. And that's why, specifically here, the people said, Lama Nigar, they said, wait a minute, we're not able to do the Pesach? We're not able to bring the Pesach sacrifice? Well, let's look at our deeds. Why did Hashem make it come about that we aren't able to bring the Pesach sacrifice? And they examined their deeds and said, wait a minute, why are we impure? So we're impure because we're carrying the bones of Yosef. He wanted to be buried in Israel, not in Egypt. And they looked through all their deeds and they examined everything. And they said, we didn't do anything wrong. There's no reason why Hashem made it that we shouldn't be able to do this mitzvah. And they were honest with themselves, and they came in front of Moshe and said, Lama Nigara, why should we lose out? There's no reason Hashem should make this happen to us. Right? Usually it happens in our lives. I'm sure you can think of a lot of things. Why did Hashem make it that I couldn't do this mitzvah? I couldn't daven, maybe I didn't take davening so seriously, so Hashem made it that I couldn't go get up for davening or
Or
something.
have a proper Pesach Seder during 2020.
Could be. There could be a million things. Everyone,
Pandemic.
each individual has to analyze their own deeds. But these people were honest with themselves. They analyzed their past deeds, and they realized there's absolutely no reason this should have happened to them. So they said, Lama Nigara, why should we lose out? And Hashem specifically wanted that mitzvah to come about through them. It was a merit to them, because what was their reaction when they lost out in the mitzvah? They said, why should we lose out? Someone was just mentioning to me on the phone, there were kind of two reactions during Corona. It was either like, I can't go to shul, I can't daven, this is horrible, what am I going to do? And there was another reaction, I don't have to go to shul, I can chill at home. So what kind of Jew are we? Are we going to be like these Jews that said, Lama Nigara, why did I lose out? How do we react, sometimes when we can't do a mitzvah? Okay, I can't go to shul today, I don't feel good. Or do we say, finally get a day off? Or do we say, you know what, I'm losing out? I can't talk to Hashem with a minyan today, or I can't go to a shiur, I can't learn Torah today. What's our reaction? What do we really value? Because we see, I think, maybe what we really value when circumstances beyond our control prevent us from doing those mitzvahs. It's just very interesting, because sometimes we think, the Torah says certain situations you don't have to do a mitzvah. So we think, okay, whatever, but we don't take a second to say, well, maybe there's a reason Hashem is preventing me from doing this mitzvah. Maybe there's something I should think about. I should be honest with myself, analyze my past deeds. It's obviously requires a degree of honesty with oneself, which is always very difficult. But so let's be like those Jews that said, Lama Nigara, why did we lose out? I think we'll stop here.
Okay. Yeah.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.